Hello friends, in today's video we will discuss about VMware Workstation networking. VMware Workstation comes with a large number of networking features which helps you to create and manage private, shared or isolated network inside VMware Workstation. Before we proceed to the actual topic of today, I would like to inform you that we have completed the lab where we have downloaded and installed the VMware Workstation. Additionally, we have installed one Windows machine, Windows 10 operating system in the VMware Workstation, and we have seen how the cloning works by cloning the Windows 10 operating system. So for all this, I will be putting the link in the description box for your reference. So let's start now. The virtual networking components which are in the Workstation Pro includes virtual switches, virtual network adapters, the virtual DHCP server, and the NAT device. So let's start with virtual switches. Like a physical switch, a virtual switch connects networking components together. Virtual switches, which are also referred to as virtual network, are named as VMNet 0, VMNet 1, VMNet 2, and so on. A few virtual switches are mapped to a specific network by default. As you can see, the network type bridge is mapped to VM network 0. Similarly, NAT network is mapped to VMNet 8 and the host only is mapped to VMNet 1 by default. Workstation Pro creates virtual switches as needed. Up to 20 virtual switches on a Windows host system and up to 255 virtual switches on a Linux host system. You can connect an unlimited number of virtual network devices to a virtual switch on a Windows host system and up to 32 virtual network devices to a virtual switch on a Linux host system. Just add a note that on Linux host system, the virtual switch names are in all lowercase letters. For example, in small letters or lowercase letters, VMNet 0 and so on. Next comes the virtual network adapters. When you use the new virtual machine wizard to create a new virtual machine, the wizard creates a virtual network adapter for the virtual machine. Workstation 6.0 and later virtual machines can have up to 10 virtual network adapters. Workstation 5.x virtual machines are limited to 3 virtual network adapters. The next component is virtual DHCP server. The Virtual Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol DHCP server provides IP addresses to virtual machines in configurations that are not bridged to an external network. For example, the virtual DHCP assigns IP addresses to virtual machines in host only and NAT configurations. The next component is NAT device. In the NAT configuration, the NAT device passes network data between one or more virtual machines, and the external network identifies incoming data packets intended for each virtual machine and sends them to the correct destination. You can configure bridge networking, NAT, and host only networking for virtual machines. You can also use the virtual networking components to create sophisticated custom virtual networks. So let's see the type of networking supported by VMware Workstation Pro. So the very first comes is bridge networking. Bridge networking connects a virtual machine to a network by using the network adapter on the host system. If the host system is on a network, the bridge networking is often the easiest way to give the virtual machine access to that network. When you install Workstation Pro on a Windows or a Linux host system, a bridge network, that is a VMNet 0, is set up for you. The next comes NAT networking. With NAT, a virtual machine does not have its own IP address on the external network. Instead, a separate private network is set up on the host system. In the default configuration, a virtual machine gets an address on this private network from the virtual DHCP server. The virtual machine and the host system share a single network identity that is not visible on the external network. When you install Workstation Pro on a Windows or a Linux host system, a NAT network that is VMNet 8 is set up for you. When you use the new virtual machine wizard to create a new virtual machine and select the typical configuration type, the wizard configure the virtual machine to use the default NAT network. You can have only one NAT network. The next comes host only networking. Host only networking creates a network that is completely contained within the host computer. Host only networking provides a network connection between the virtual machine and the host system by using a virtual network adapter that is visible on the host operating system. When you install Workstation Pro on a Windows or a Linux host system, a host only network VM network 1 is set up for you. The last comes a custom networking configuration. With the Workstation Pro virtual networking component, you can create sophisticated virtual network. The virtual network can be connected to one or more external network, or they can run entirely on the host system. You can use the virtual network editor to configure multiple network cards in the host system and create multiple virtual networks. So let's begin with the configuration. We will have a look how to configure the bridge network, how to configure the network address translation, and how to configure the host only networking. So starting, we will be opening our VMware Workstation Pro, which we installed in our previous video. Thereafter, in the next video, we have installed Windows 10 and made a clone of Windows 10 Lab. So let's take one of the machine. Let's say it is Windows 10 Lab, and when we have deployed configured this machine, at that time we have chosen for the typical configuration and NAT was selected by default. So let's see of the first option, that is configuring the bridge networking. We will power on this machine. Before powering on, we will edit it and we will say that I want to configure this machine in the bridge network. Additionally, I would like to say that when you install a VMware Workstation Pro on a Windows or a Linux host system, a bridge network, that a VMNet 0 is set up for you. Let's see where is the VMNet 0 first. Going to the edit option, in edit you will be going to virtual network editor. Over here, just click on change setting to find all the default network adapters map to which all the network types. It will show you over here that which network adapter by default is mapped to which network type, and you can see that VMNet 0 is by default mapped to the bridge network. VMNet 1 is by default mapped to host only, and VMNet 8 is by default mapped to NAT network, as we have discussed in the start of this video. Additionally, you will see that VMNet 0 bridge. This bridge means it is directly connected to the host of my machine, the physical host. VMNet 1 is host only, and then on this particular by default there is a DHCP running. The subnet IP is 192.168.30.0 with subnet mask 255.255.255.0. We'll go and see what is the DHCP setting. By default, they have given the DHCP setting starting from 192.168.30.128 up to 254. Coming to the NAT, over here they have used the network as 192.168.137.0/24, and the DHCP setting is to be 192.168.137.128, ending address 192.168.137.254. Let's go for the NAT setting. In the NAT setting, by default, it is the gateway IP is 192.168.137.2. So first we will focus on the bridge network. Let's close this. We will edit the virtual machine, and I will say that the network adapter I want need to be bridge. I will apply this setting by clicking OK. I will power on this virtual machine. Till the time it's power on, let me say that when you install the Workstation Pro on the Windows or Linux host system, a bridge network, that is VMNet 0, is set up for you, as we have seen. Additionally, the bridge network connects to a virtual machine to a network by using the network adapter on the host system. We will see now when the machine boots that it is connected to your host system. And before that, let me show you the physical machine. My physical machine, going to command prompt, I will say ipconfig, and it is saying me that my IP address of the physical host is 192.168.0.166. Let's see the IP address of this machine. So, in our case, we can see the host machine, and this is on the same network. So, if the host system is on a network, bridge networking is often the easiest way to give the virtual machine access to that network. Let's see the IP address of this machine. We have bridged this machine with our physical machine. We have chosen the network type to be bridge network, and you can see that my machine is taking the IP from the same source from which my physical host has taken in the same network, 192.168.0.166, and it is saying that 192.168.0.108, which means that this Windows 10 machine is bridged to my physical host network adapter. So with bridge networking, the virtual network adapter in the virtual machine connects to a physical network adapter in the host system. The host network adapter enables the virtual machine to connect to the LAN that the host system uses. Bridge networking works with both wire and wireless host network adapters. So over here I am using the wireless network. If it would be a wired network, then too it would have worked and it would have bridged to the LAN adapter instead of the physical wireless adapter. So bridge networking configures the virtual machine as a unique identity on the network, separates from and unrelated to the host system. The virtual machine is a full participant in the network. As you can see, it is totally a different machine, but it is fully participating with the same with connecting to the same network using the different host ID. The virtual machine is a full participant in the network. It has access to other machines on the network, and other machines on the network can contact it as it were a physical computer on the network. So let's see how it happens. As I told you that we went to the command prompt and checked the IP address of this machine, and it's saying that 192.168.0.108. We haven't done any routing configuration or anything till now, and straight away after connecting this to the bridge network, we will try to ping to my machine. If my firewall is off, definitely I will get a ping, or else no. Yeah, you can see that my machine is pingable from here. At the same time, if I try to ping this VM machine 0.108, and it's not pinging. Okay, I think that the firewall is on over here. I will just turn off the firewall and we will see that how it is connected, as it like they both are in the same network and it is a physical machine. Let's turn off the firewall. The firewall is off, and you can see now the machine will start to ping now. Yeah, it started to ping. So by default, VMNet 0 is set to use auto bridging mode and is configured to bridge to all the active network adapters on the host system. You can use the virtual network editor to change VMNet 0 to bridge to one specific host network adapter, or restrict the host network adapter that VMNet 0 auto bridges to. The changes whatever you will make on this particular adapter will be reflected to all the machines. Now coming to the assignment IP addresses in the bridge networking environment. A virtual machine must have its own identity, as we discussed over the bridge network. For example, over a network, the virtual machine needs its own IP address. Let's say, for example, this was the case, and if you can see by typing the command over here, to config all, it is saying that it has taken from the DHCP server 192.168.0.1. Okay. Over here, the IP being assigned to this particular virtual machine is through the DHCP from where my machine is getting the IP address. But in case if you want the IP address to be assigned, the static IP address to be assigned, then your network administrator can tell you whether the IP addresses are available for this virtual machine. If there is any IP addresses which is free on this network, you can assign that particular IP, and even in that case, it will work. So typically, the guest operating system can acquire an IP address and another network details from a DHCP server, but you might need to set the IP address and other details manually in the guest operating system. You can do that. As in my case, I already have a DHCP server running for my host, so my VM will take the IP address from there through a bridge connection. But if in case if I need to assign IP address, I can do so by configuring the free IP address to this VM from my host network. And one interesting thing, just add a note of this. If you go to the setting in the network adapter part, you will find one option over here. In network adapter, this is the option replicate physical network connection state. So if you use the virtual machine on a laptop or other mobile device, select this option replicate physical network connection state. This setting will cause the IP address to be renewed when you move from one wired or wireless network to another wired or wireless network. So that was all about the bridge network. Now moving on to the network address translation. When you install a Workstation Pro on a Windows or Linux host system, a NAT network, that is a VMNet 8, is set up for you, as we have seen sometime before. So when you use the new virtual machine wizard to create a typical virtual machine, the wizard configuration configure the virtual machine to use by default NAT network. In our previous video, when we were configuring the Windows 10, at that time we have chosen the typical the wizard type to be typical, and over there we saw that the default adapter which we got was a NAT network. So with NAT, a virtual machine does not have its own IP address, as we have seen in the network editor just now sometime before. Let's see again. So it does not have its own IP address on the external network. Instead, a separate private network is set up on the host system. In the default configuration, virtual machine get an address of this private network from the virtual DHCP server. Virtual DHCP server. Let me take you to the VMNet 8, and I will change the setting for this, and you will see over here that the DHCP is configured. Let it open first. Okay, let's go to VMNet 8. Over here you can see that the type of the network adapter is NAT. It is connected to a host virtual adapter to the network, which is VMNet 8. It's saying they use the local DHCP service. So as I told you that with NAT, a virtual machine does not have its own IP address on the external network. Instead, a separate private network is set up on the host, and in the default configuration, virtual machine get an address of this private network from virtual DHCP server. This is the DHCP server, DHCP setting, DHCP server. Okay, so let's do one thing. We will change the network adapter of this machine, and we will be changing this from a bridge network to the NAT adapter. Let's move on and change this to NAT and say OK. So now we have changed the network adapter type to be NAT, and you can let's see the IP address of this machine now. Well, I mean IP config. Now it has taken the IP address to 192.168.137.134. So how this IP address came? This is not coming from my host network, because my host network is in 192.168.0.0 network. So this particular IP address is coming from the virtual DHCP server, which is configured on this particular adapter, and the NATing is taking place through this particular adapter. If you will see this, and the network configured over here is 192.168.137.0, and the IP address taken is from this particular DHCP server with the default gateway to be 192.168.137.2. So the virtual machine and the host system share a single network identity that is not visible on the external network. NAT works by translating the IP address of virtual machine in the private network to IP address of the host system. So what basically it is doing over here, it is translating its IP address 192.168.137.x to the IP address of the host system. So when a virtual machine sends a request, when this particular machine which has an adapter type to be NAT, when this machine will send a request to access the network resources, it appears to network resources as if the request is coming from the host system. So this machine, the VM machine is now NATed to my host machine, and whatever request it is sending now from here to access the network resources, it will the destination services, the destination server will come to know that this particular service is requested by my host machine, my physical machine, not from this virtual machine, because we have netted this particular IP address with the network adapter of my host. So this is how we understood that how the NAT configuration is done. We have now we have understanding of a DHCP in the NAT configuration. So just to summarize, in a NAT configuration, virtual machines running on the network with a NAT device can send DHCP requests to dynamically obtain their IP addresses. In the default configuration, the virtual DHCP server dynamically allocates IP addresses in the range of network let's say 128 IP addresses, or it can be 254 IP addresses. Over here we have seen it has allotted 128 IP addresses. Apart from that, in addition to the IP addresses, the virtual DHCP server on the NAT network sends out the configuration information that enables the virtual machine to operate. This information includes the default gateway and the DNS server. In the DHCP response, the NAT device instructs the virtual machine to use the IP address starting from IP address as .2 as the default gateway and the DNS server. As you can see, the default gateway over here, it is saying to be 192.168.137.2. So this default gateway and the DNS server is also assigned as 192.168.137.2 when you are using the NAT adapter. So this routing causes all IP packet destined for the external network and DNS requests to be forwarded to the NAT device. Let's summarize the NAT, how NAT device works. The NAT device is connected to VMNet virtual. So as we have seen, it was by default. Virtual machines connected to the NAT network also use a VMNet virtual switch. So the NAT device waits for the packet coming from virtual machine on the VMNet 8 virtual network. Even a packet arrives, the NAT device translates the address of the virtual machine to the address of the host system before forwarding the packet to the external network. So whenever any device which is connected to the NAT adapter, it any packet comes on this particular adapter, it arrives at the NAT. The NAT device translates the address of the virtual machine. It translates the address of this virtual machine to the address of the host system, to the physical machine. It can be a laptop, desktop, on whatever you have installed the VMware Workstation. And after translating, it has translated the address to the virtual machine, the host system, before forwarding the packet to the external network. So before, let's say for example, I try to ping 8.8.8.8, it has started to ping and start reaching the outside world. So before reaching, what it will do, it will translate this particular IP address 192.168.137.134 to the IP address of my machine, which is 192.168.0.166. So my virtual machine, when it is in the NAT mode and the network adapter is NAT, it will translate its own IP address to this IP address to communicate to the outside world. So the NAT device is a DNS proxy and forward DNS request from the virtual machine to a DNS server that the host system knows. Responses return to the NAT device when the forward them to the virtual machine. Now, if they get the configuration information from the virtual DHCP server, the virtual machine on the NAT network uses the NAT device as the DNS server. So while configuring this NAT machine is basically using that particular IP as a DNS server also. The virtual machine in the private NAT network are not accessible through DNS. Now IP config. Let me take you to the detail as IP config all, and it will give you the DNS and everything. Now see, it is saying that is your IP address, this is a gateway, and then default gateway is 192.168.137.2. Even the DNS server, it is saying that 192.168.137.2. Although using this DNS you are able to reach outside, you are able to resolve any of the domain. Now let's go, we are trying to ping, we will try to browse some website when your machine is connected to the network adapter as NAT, or else if it takes time we will try to ping google.com. Okay, sorry, it's typing error. Ping google.com. Okay, you can see it has resolved the domain google, and we are able to ping also. So which means that your DNS is working, your DNS is resolving the IP address, sorry, your domain to the IP address. But at the same time, if you are making this machine, if you are configuring this machine as a web server, in that case, if you want this machine to be exposed to the internet, I mean, if someone want to come from outside to inside, this DNS won't work in that case. So the virtual machine in the private NAT network are not accessible through DNS. To have the virtual machine running on the NAT network access each other by the DNS name, you must set up a private DNS server connected to the NAT network and configure the virtual machine to use the DNS server. We will be doing the hands-on lab during our Active Directory series, and you will get an idea on this as well. The third one is configuring the host-only networking. See, when you install, as we have seen that when you install the Workstation Pro on a Windows or a Linux host system, a host-only network, that is a VMNet 1, is set up for you. Host-only networking is useful if you need to set up an isolated virtual network. In a host-only network, the virtual machine and the host virtual network adapter are connected to a private Ethernet network. The network is completely contained with the host system. The network connection between the virtual machine and the host system is provided by a virtual network adapter that is visible on the host operating system. The virtual DHCP server provides IP address on the host network. Let me take you till there first. As you can see over here, by default you have one host only networking. By default one adapter is there. If you want to add some more adapter, you can simply say add network VMNet2, and you will say OK. So in the default configuration, a virtual machine is a host-only network, cannot connect to the internet. If you install the proper routing or a proxy software on the host system, you can establish a connection between the host virtual network adapter and a physical network adapter on the host system to connect the virtual machine to a token ring or to other Ethernet network. So this is how you have added the host-only network. But as I told you that this will not work on its own. You need a proper routing mechanism. So usually, friends, when we will be doing a labs on firewalls, in the firewall series, we will be configuring a network in the host only mode, and we will route the traffic over the internet through these network adapters. So see, now the VMNet 2, it is there, and it has even it has taken the IP address. If you wish to change the IP address, you can just change it from here. You can say 192.168, you want to give the 10.0 network, and this will be the subnet mask. If you want to use the DHCP, you can say yes, you can check this. If you don't want to use the DHCP, you will say no, and simply you will apply, and your VMnet 2 will be configured. So this is all about the VMware Workstation networking. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and do share with your friends. If you have any doubt related to VMware networking, please feel free to comment me in the comment box. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.